I don't. Maybe Suzuki gets an 8-year deal, but he's someone that has a bigger ceiling than Joel Eriksson Ek, in my opinion, and will be going short term and then long term, or going long term with big money. Like, I think he's going to be closer to more close. He'll be looking more at what happens with Pettersson and compare it to what Barzal got more than anything else. That's how good I think he is. I look at how he plays, and he is a 200-foot game, and how patient he is with the puck, and how creative he gets at times. It's so fun to watch him play, and as I said, I think everyone saw the potential in what Suzuki could be after watching last year's playoffs and last season, but we weren't sure whether or not he could keep it up the full season. And I don't think he did, but he's definitely stepped it up these playoffs. He's taken it to an extra gear. He's been, in my opinion, outside of Carey Price, he's been the best Montreal Canadian in these playoffs. And it's not even close. And that's not a knock on someone like Cole Caulfield, who's been very exciting and the media darling, but it's been Suzuki who's been driving the bus.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he sort of reminds me. Sorry, Devin. Just to quickly, he sort of reminds me a little bit. He's got some Braden Point in him.
Yeah, he definitely does. The crazy thing about it is that he has 1 year left on his ELC, and then he's in RFA. So overall, just he has one more year to really solidify himself to being a top center. Top 1 or 2 center within this league, and with the growth and development and getting the chemistry together with Cole Caulfield, you know that they're going to be on a line next year. It's a scary tandem between those two, and as I said before in this podcast, those two together for the next decade, man, that's a scary tandem.
Yeah, I agree with everything. I think Sean made a great point though in terms of the comparables to the Suzuki contract, right? I mean, when you look at how he performed last year's playoffs, how he did, during this regular season, and then how he's performing in these playoffs, yeah, I think he's pretty much right on par with that kind of benchmark where you're going to see the deal out of Pettersson and Barzal. Like, I think he's kind of right in that ballpark with those guys. Maybe it took him a little longer to get there. Perhaps not as like highly coveted as the other two, obviously, but boy, we're seeing the dividends of what hard work can do, because he's put himself in a nice position to earn some big money for sure. And I mean, if you're Bergevin and you're kind of looking at that, like, do you want to, with a player like that, like, it's kind of the same situation in Vancouver right now, where do you want to give these guys, a bridge deal and then have them make even more after 2 or 3 seasons on the bridge deal, or do you want to kind of try and lock them up for the best part of their careers now at hopefully a reasonable price? But I mean, I think if you're looking long term, he's an $8 million player for sure. I mean, short term, maybe you can get him a little less and then kind of bridge that. But yeah, just a terrific postseason from Nick Suzuki for sure. He's showing that he's going to be a force on Montreal for years to come.
Well, if we're going through a comparison of what Kev said, Braden Point got a 3-year deal at 6.75, and I don't see that being unreasonable for Suzuki to get one for the next 3 years and then bump up after that. But yeah, you really think that if you are the player, that's what you want. But if you're a GM, you want to make sure that they are locked up for as long as you can, for as little as you can, because even within the next let's say 4 years from now, I believe that's when the cap will do its little bump up, and it won't be a flat cap, and you got to expect that they'll be wanting more, and maybe not being one of those players that you can look back on and being like, well, there's this very team friendly deal, just because of where the cap is and how much players going to be getting.
Okay, can I just throw out a couple of scenarios here? It's sort of to see where this will probably help where we put Suzuki. Joel, what are you paying to keep Danault?
Oh, geez. Yeah. I mean, I don't have Danault's numbers in front of me here in terms of his offense, but obviously it's his play away from the puck that where he kind of makes his money. That's kind of his bread and butter of his game. Oh, I think, Philip Danault is easily a $3 million player, probably more. I think a lot of teams would love to have a player like Philip Danault on their third, fourth line. And if you're looking for a center that can fill those roles, that's typically speaking what you're going to be paying. So.
Okay. Does anyone disagree with that amount?
I'll be surprised if he decides to stay in Montreal. I think he'll get between 3 and 3.5. I think there might be a quote unquote hometown discount, or just because you've done something exciting in these playoffs. Maybe you want to try and build on that, and knowing the cap is a bit. He's coming off of a 3-year deal where he was making just over $3 million on the cap, and his actual salary this year was 3.25. But if he does hit the market, I think he could get upwards of 4. I think that's just like he is someone that you want to be your third line center, who can take tough minutes but still be able to help drive offense and be a distributor in the middle to some good wingers if you've got the right wingers for him. So I think in the right situation and the right team, I think they could definitely go 4+ for what he'll make. But if I'm Montreal, I'm going to try and keep him under 3.5 for sure.
I think they have to try and keep under 3.5. They only have 10.6 in projected salary cap, and they still have to sign Noel Armia, Kotkaniemi, Arturi Lehkonen, depending if you want to bring those guys back. And then on the back end, you also have Cale Fleury. He's coming out. He's still an RFA, so he won't get that much. But and depending if they want to get a bit more scoring, getting him a UFA in there, maybe at a cheaper price, then I don't know. If you're Marc Bergevin, you definitely want to be under or around 3.5 if he's up, because if he does hit the market, Danault, he'll probably, I know Sean, he'll probably get 4 to 4.5, maybe even 5, depending on which team is desperate enough and it really needs that shutdown center.
What are you paying Kotkaniemi?
Oh, he's getting a bridge deal. It won't be. You look at what he hasn't really broken out. So I don't think he's going to get a big deal unless they're able to convince him to go long term at a little bit more expensive. But it still won't be. If there's anyone who could maybe do something that's similar to what Joel Eriksson Ek did, it is Kotkaniemi, in my opinion. But I don't think he's going to get that 5 point something that Eriksson Ek got. But I really see Kotkaniemi getting a short term deal that will be in the 2 to 3 range, I think.
I instantly thought about Sam Bennett and the underwhelming returns that you're expecting from a player like that, and he signed a 2-year deal back in 17, starting 17-18 for 1.9, and then another 2-year deal that was 2.2 or 2.5. So I think that somewhere around there would be something that Kotkaniemi will probably get. Obviously, he's going to push for a little bit more, but yeah, he hasn't really broken out yet, and that is totally fine. You know, I think he's a formidable player that will be a big role within that middle 6 lineup for the Montreal Canadiens. And but if I was Bergevin, I'd go 3 years at 2.5.
Yeah, I mean that's a bit of a tougher one, right? Because I feel like with Philip Danault, you kind of know what you're getting. Like, he's the shutdown guy. He's good in the faceoffs. You know a lot about him, right? Whereas Kotkaniemi, even though he's been in the league for quite a while, and you look at his age and you're like, really, has he played that many games? Well, you still you're not quite sure how high the ceiling is on this kid, right? I think he's a terrific offensive player. You know, obviously there's gaps in his defensive game, and you see him like he's obviously gotten better across the last couple seasons at playing away from the puck. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking at signing him up for a contract, yes, I think that the bridge deal is the way to go, just because then you can get, you know, see what he's about in the next 2-3 years, how he develops, and not have to sink money into him long term. And then, you know, 4, 5, 6 years down the road, if you still have him under contract and he's not living up to that, it's, you know, it's a bad look for you. But for me, like, when I look at it, like, I think, you know, if you're going to give Philip Deneau at least $3.5 million, you'd have to pay Kotkaniemi somewhere in that range, right? Like, would you pay Philip Deneau more than you'd pay Kotkaniemi?
Yes.
For me, yeah, probably, right? Because, again, you know, the defensive responsibility and the minutes that he can eat up. But if you have Deneau going for, say, $4 million, like, I could see Kotkaniemi coming in at $3.5. I think both of those guys obviously are going to be asking for a little bit of bump in terms of their salary, and you know, I can see other teams offer sheeting a guy like Kotkaniemi if they don't come to terms.
Kotkaniemi's 21 and Deneau's 28, so that's a big difference within development as well, and that needs to be considered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think $3 million is the very top of what Kotkaniemi is going to get in the offseason. I think that would be for a 4+ year deal. I think it's going to be a 2 to 3 year deal at the very most. And I think Devin's right in terms of the comparison to Sam Bennett, in terms of someone who came in like it was like they had high expectations for him, and he played decent in his first year, but hasn't quite been able to build on that the way everyone expected. So I think it's going to be a 2-year deal. I think it's going to be, the more I think about it, less than $2.5 million if you even reach $2 million. Just because you look at his points, like he's got 62 points in 171 games. So that's a 0.36 per game rate. That's not great. That's not something that you're going to want to lock in long term at even very good big money on. I think it is going to be a two-year deal at right around $2 million. I think is what's going to end up happening with Kotkaniemi. And then bring it back to the talk about Suzuki. Suzuki's the guy who drives the bus. Like, I think, Kevin, you're right in terms of using that the Braden Point contract as a good comparable, as a player who's the drives the bus for Montreal. Point's the guy who drives the bus for Tampa, and he may not be the most skilled player on the team, although I think you could argue that Suzuki might actually be that on Montreal right now.
Oh, he's an incredible passer.
Oh yeah,
he's a great passer.
I think that's what it is, because when you compare him to Barzal and Pettersson, it's not there. The point totals aren't quite there. The point rate production isn't quite at their level, but he's way ahead of Kotkaniemi, way ahead of Joel Eriksson in terms of that, and he's still a 200-foot player that you feel comfortable putting out there on the penalty kill. And look, he nearly scored a shorthanded goal to end the game last night.
Yeah.
I think he is looking at probably a 2 to 3 year deal in the high 6s, low 7s after next season.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm thinking as well. But it is like what I think the Canadians have some decisions to make, though, in terms of what you do with Deneau and Kotkaniemi and Jake Evans. What's Jake Evans' role going to be if Deneau leaves? I can see Jake Evans taking over that shutdown role from Philip Deneau too. So